Welcome back. Today we are diving headfirst into a real heavyweight battle at the very heart of democracy. We're talking about a clash of titans that pits the power of a government to make laws against the power of the courts to protect your fundamental rights.
So let me start by asking you a question. Imagine a law gets passed, and you think it's deeply, fundamentally unfair. Now, normally, you could go to court to challenge it. But what if the government had a kind of constitutional shield, a magic box where they could just place that law, making it totally immune to any legal challenge whatsoever? Believe it or not, this isn't some dystopian fantasy. It's the real story of a decades-long constitutional battle right here in India.
All right, so to really get this, we've got to rewind the clock. We're going way back to the years right after India's independence. The new government was trying to push through these massive land reforms, breaking up huge estates held by powerful landlords. But they hit a snag, a huge snag. The courts, doing their job as protectors of fundamental rights, kept striking down these laws, saying they violated the right to property.
So Parliament was in a real bind. How are you supposed to carry out your big social and economic plans if the courts are constantly blocking you? Their solution? Well, it was brilliant and also really, really controversial. They decided to amend the Constitution itself, the very first amendment, in fact.
And this amendment created something called the Ninth Schedule. Seriously, the best way to think of it is as a constitutional get-out-of-jail-free card. It's a special list, and by passing another constitutional amendment, Parliament could stick any law they wanted onto this list. And once a law was in that box, poof, it was untouchable. It couldn't be challenged in any court for violating the fundamental rights that are supposed to be guaranteed to every citizen.
What this kicked off was this incredible, decades-long power tussle. It was like watching a high-stakes chess match between Parliament and the Supreme Court, with each side making strategic moves and countermoves, trying to assert its authority.
And for a while, the ground beneath their feet was constantly shifting. At first, the Supreme Court basically said, yep, Parliament can amend anything, even fundamental rights. But then, in 1967, in a landmark case called Golak Nath, the court did a complete 180. A full bench of judges declared that Parliament had absolutely no power to take away or water down fundamental rights, period.
And this really gets to the heart of the disagreement, right? You had two totally different points of view. Parliament was saying, hey, we need the flexibility to amend the Constitution to bring about real social change for the people. But the Supreme Court saw its role very differently. They saw themselves as the ultimate guardians of the Constitution, a sentinel on the qui-vive, always watchful, always ready to protect a citizen's most basic rights.
Now, here's where things get a little out of hand. Remember how this whole thing started with just 13 land reform laws needing protection? Well, that number didn't stay small for long. It exploded. We're talking from 13 all the way to 284 laws. And a whole bunch of these had absolutely nothing to do with land reform anymore.
So you can probably see where this is going, right? This massive, unchecked expansion of the Ninth Schedule was basically a recipe for a showdown. It was all leading to a massive turning point in the story, where the Supreme Court finally decided enough is enough. It's time to draw a line in the sand.
And even before the big moment, you could see the writing on the wall. Judges were already getting nervous. As early as 1965, a judge named Justice Mudholkar was asking this really profound question. He was basically saying, hang on a second, is there a difference between just amending the Constitution and completely rewriting it? Is there a line that even Parliament can't cross? And that very question led directly to the Supreme Court's ultimate checkmate. In 1973, in the legendary Kesavananda Bharati case, the court laid down something called the Basic Structure Doctrine. The verdict was a game changer. They said, okay, Parliament, you can amend the Constitution, you can tweak it, but you cannot destroy its soul. Certain things, its basic structure, like democracy, the rule of law, judicial review, were now completely off limits.
And here's the really crucial part. The court drew a literal line in the sand on a specific date, April 24th, 1973. That's the day the judgment was delivered, and it became the all-important cutoff point. Seriously, remember this date, because it's the key to the whole rest of the story.
So the Basic Structure Doctrine completely changed the game. Now the stage was set for the final showdown. The big question wasn't if there was a line anymore, but whether the Ninth Schedule's magic shield was strong enough to protect laws that tried to cross it. And it all came to a head in a landmark case in 2007 called I.R. Coelho. A massive 9-judge bench got together to answer one single giant question.
does that magic shield, the Ninth Schedule, still work if the law inside it attacks the very soul of the Constitution? Or does the basic structure doctrine have the final say? Basically, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object?
And the court's answer? An absolute resounding no. The judgment was crystal clear. The Ninth Schedule is not some constitutional black hole where rights go to disappear. The Chief Justice pointed out that the very power of judicial review, your right to go to court, is itself part of the basic structure. You can't use the Constitution's own rules to tear it down from the inside. So what the court did was create this really clear two-step test for any law put in the Ninth Schedule after that all-important 1973 date. Step 1. Does the law violate a fundamental right? If the answer is yes, you go to step 2. Does that violation damage or destroy the basic structure of the Constitution? If the answer is yes again, boom, the law gets struck down. The shield is pierced. It fails. Okay, so I know this sounds like a lot of heavy legal stuff, and it is, but why should you care? What does this decades-long battle actually mean for us today in our everyday lives? Well, it turns out it means a lot.
Takeaway number 1, and this is a big one. Judicial review is here to stay. It's non-negotiable. What that means is the power of our courts to look at a law and check if it's constitutional can't be taken away. Not by anyone. It's a foundational pillar of our democracy.
Second, this whole thing settled a huge debate. Who's the boss? And the final answer is the Constitution. Not Parliament, not the government, not even the courts. The Constitution itself is supreme. This makes sure we have a system of checks and balances, so no one branch of government can ever get too powerful. And this is probably the most important part for you and me. The court basically put a protective bubble around our most fundamental rights. Things like the right to equality, freedom of speech, the right to life and liberty, the very essence of who we are as a democracy. The court said these ideas form the basic structure, which means no government can just legislate them away by hiding a law in the Ninth Schedule. They are safe.
So, yeah, this verdict was a huge win for the rule of law and for individual rights. But it leaves us with one final kind of mind-bending question to chew on. If the courts are the final guardians of the Constitution, the ones who check the power of our elected leaders, who checks the courts? Who watches the watchers? It's a question that really gets to the heart of the delicate, fragile balance that keeps a democracy going.